The last train ride. The station that shouldn't exist. Ethan had walked this route home 100 times before. Past the diner where he worked late shifts, past the bookstore that still hadn't reopened after the fire, past the crumbling alley where the streetlights never seemed to work. But tonight was different. Tonight, he saw the stairwell. It shouldn't have been there. He knew every corner of this street, and there had never been an entrance before. It was wide and old, stone steps leading down into darkness, framed by rusting iron railings. Above it, a cracked wooden sign swayed in the cold wind, the letters so faded they were almost illegible. Briarford Station. Ethan stopped. His heart thudded in his chest as he stared down the stairs. He should have kept walking. Every instinct told him to. But something about the sign pulled at him, a whisper at the back of his mind urging, "Go down. Just look." Before he realized it, his feet were moving. The air grew colder as he descended. The noise of the city faded until there was nothing but the sound of his own breathing. His hand trailed along the damp railing, slick with condensation. By the time he reached the bottom, his stomach churned with a nervous weight. The station stretched before him like a mausoleum. Concrete cracked with weeds, walls stained with mildew, flickering yellow bulbs that gave off more shadow than light. The old ticket booths were boarded shut, the timetables above them blank, and yet he wasn't alone. A sound echoed faintly down the tunnel. Wheels. Ethan froze, his pulse spiking. The sound grew louder, closer, until headlights bloomed in the darkness. A train was coming. Sparks spat as iron screeched against iron. The thing that pulled into the station looked ancient, far older than anything that should still be running. Its body was streaked with grime, windows fogged over, steel corroded with rust. The doors slid open with a groan. A warped voice crackled from the intercom, distant and distorted, like an old tape being chewed up by a cassette player. Last train. Bored now, Ethan should have run. Every instinct screamed for him to turn around to get out before the doors closed, but he stepped inside. The interior was dim, lit by buzzing bulbs that swayed as though disturbed by a breeze that wasn't there. Rows of cracked leather seats lined the carriage. The smell of rust and damp fabric filled his lungs, and then he saw the passengers. They sat in silence, scattered throughout the car. A woman in a tattered coat, her head tilted back, eyes clouded white. An old man clutching a battered briefcase, his knuckles pale, lips stretched wide in a smile that looked like it had been carved into his face. Two children holding hands, their skin waxy, their eyes empty. They weren't alive, and yet they breathed. Their chests rose and fell in shallow mechanical rhythm. Their heads twitched every now and then, as though pulled by invisible strings. Ethan's legs shook as he stumbled into an empty seat at the back. The doors sealed shut, the train lurched forward, and Ethan knew he was trapped. For a while, the only sound was the clatter of wheels against rails. Ethan forced himself to look out the window, anything to avoid the dead stares of the passengers. But what he saw outside made his stomach twist. The train wasn't moving through tunnels. It passed through landscapes that couldn't exist. Forests of bone-white trees that stretched forever. A black river that boiled and steamed, its surface littered with drifting shapes Ethan didn't dare name. A vast field of crosses, each one marked with names written in languages he couldn't read. He tore his gaze away, pressing his hands over his eyes. That's when he heard it. A whisper. It came from across the aisle. The old man with the briefcase had turned his head. His milky eyes locked on Ethan, his lips twitching as dry, broken words spilled out. "You shouldn't have boarded." Ethan's throat constricted. What is this place? Where is this train going? The old man's grin widened, stretching too far, tearing the corners of his mouth. "We're going where you belong." The lights flickered violently, plunging the carriage into darkness for a heartbeat. When they came back on, Ethan's blood ran cold. Every single passenger had turned their head toward him. Dozens of lifeless eyes stared. Dozens of lips curled into faint, knowing smiles. And in one whisper, unified and echoing through the car, they spoke. "Welcome aboard." Windows of the past. Ethan's mouth went dry. The chorus of whispers still echoed in his skull, though the carriage had fallen silent again. The passengers had returned to their slack, lifeless poses, as though they hadn't moved at all. But he couldn't shake it. He had seen them, all of them, staring, smiling, welcoming him like he was meant to be here. The train rattled on. Ethan forced himself to look at the window again, desperate for something, anything, to ground himself. But what he saw wasn't the nightmare landscapes from before. It was his childhood home. The view was sharp and clear, though it passed by at impossible speed. There was the narrow driveway, the sagging porch, the swing set where he and his sister used to play. For a second, Ethan almost smiled. Then he noticed the figure standing in the upstairs window. It was him, a boy of 8 or 9, staring out with wide eyes, his small hands pressed against the glass. The child version of himself looked right at him as the train thundered past. His lips moved silently. Ethan leaned closer, trying to read them. His stomach dropped as the words formed. "You shouldn't be here." He flinched back from the window. The scene outside shifted in an instant, the house vanishing into smoke and shadow. Now, the glass showed a different place, the hospital. Ethan's heart clenched. He knew this memory. He was 15, sitting in a sterile hallway while machines beeped faintly in the distance. His mother had been inside that room for weeks, slipping further every day. And there he was again, a younger Ethan slumped in a chair, face pale and hollow. The boy's head snapped up, his eyes, too old for his face, locked with Ethan's. Once more, his lips moved. "Why did you leave her?" Ethan slammed his fist against the glass. "Shut up, that wasn't my fault." A woman's voice rasped beside him. "None of it was your fault." Ethan whipped around. The woman in the tattered coat had turned her head. Her white eyes rolled toward him, her mouth opening in a ragged smile. Strings of black saliva dripped down her chin. "You did what you had to do," she croaked. Ethan froze. "What are you talking about?" Her smile widened. "You know." The train lurched violently. Ethan gripped the seat, his stomach flipping. The lights flickered overhead. The windows shifted again, showing a scene that made his chest tighten in raw panic. The diner, just last week. He saw himself walking out the back door after closing. He saw the alley behind the building, the trash bins, the broken street lamp, and he saw her, the woman. She had been drunk, maybe high, stumbling out of the shadows, grabbing his arm, begging for money. He'd shaken her off, muttered something, walked away. He hadn't looked back. But now, through the train's window, he saw her collapse onto the cold concrete. He saw her body twitch, then go still, and then he saw her face. White eyes, black saliva. The same woman sitting across from him now. Ethan's breath hitched. He turned toward her slowly. She was still smiling. Her lips moved silently this time, but he knew the words. "You left me there." Ethan scrambled up from his seat, stumbling down the aisle. He didn't care where he was going. He just had to get away from her, from the windows, from all of it. The train seemed longer than before, stretching into impossible distance. The farther he ran, the more carriages he passed, each one filled with more passengers. Their faces blurred, but every one of them turned toward him as he went by, their mouths twitching into those awful, knowing smiles. He burst into the next car, empty. For the first time since boarding, he was alone. His chest heaved, sweat dripping down his temples. He leaned against the door, trying to steady himself. Then he heard it. A child's laugh, high-pitched, familiar. He turned toward the window, dread sinking into his bones. Outside, he saw the park where he and his sister used to play. The swings swayed, chains squealing in the breeze. And there she was, Lila, no older than 6, her hair tied up in pigtails, smiling as she pumped her legs. Ethan's throat tightened. Lila! The boy version of himself sat on the swing beside her, laughing. For a moment, it was almost beautiful, pure, innocent. Then Lila's swing slowed. Her head drooped forward. Her small body slumped, limp. The boy kept swinging, his laughter turning hollow, echoing like the passengers' whispers. Slowly, he raised his head. Ethan's younger self looked straight at him through the window. His eyes were hollow voids. His smile stretched far too wide. It's your fault. The lights in the carriage went out, and in the pitch black, dozens of voices whispered at once. Welcome aboard.